Welcome to this presentation about the Informs Analytics Framework. This is Johan Bosweier. I'm a co-author of the framework. I'm joined today by two certified analytics professional colleagues, Aidan Dumas and Nicholas McMillan. Together, we'll be introducing you to the framework for your use. In this session, we will provide you with background about how the Informs Analytics Framework was developed, along with explanations of each of the 7 domains. We will show you the IAF in action as it is not linear but interactive in real-world situations, and present 2 high-level use cases so you can see the IAF as it is applied and how it achieves each domain objective. Then we will conclude with some key takeaways. For those who may not know what Informs is, Informs advances operation research, analytics, and decision science worldwide through research, education, professional certification, and global collaboration. The organization is comprised of over 12,000 members in 90 countries, representing the range of prestigious academic institutions, private sector companies from major corporations through small businesses and sole practitioners, and various public sector agencies at the federal, state, and local levels. In addition to its many professional publications, conferences, webinars, and association chapters, Informs manages a tri-level certification program known as CAP, which certifies analytics professionals. The most recent addition to these professional services and products is the IAF. What exactly is the Informs Analytics Framework, known as IAF? It is a trademarked, structured 7-domain approach that guides organizations in systematically managing analytics or AI initiatives, helping ensure consistent, high-quality insights, effective decision-making, and measurable business impact. It outlines a structured approach from problem or question framing to lifecycle management and is used in various professional contexts. It enables practitioners to define analytics roles, responsibilities, and tasks, and improves impactful decisions across business, research, healthcare, education, policy, and hiring scenarios. IAF was developed by seasoned experts through decades of trial and error, lessons learned, and proven methods to deliver the value of analytics and artificial intelligence. The IAF can unify methodologies already in use in businesses, is familiar to the analytics community, and is vendor, software, and methodology neutral. It is important to know why the IAF matters. Unfortunately, despite the great potential of analytics, a significant number of analytics efforts fail, do not deliver value, or are unsustainable. The primary cause of these failures is an unclear objective, namely either not addressing a business problem or question, trying to answer the wrong question, or misalignment with business needs. Too often, analytics and more recently AI efforts start with data or tools rather than a business problem or question. IAF, as you will see today, helps navigate back to problem framing and alignment with an objective regardless of where your efforts started. What makes IAF unique is that each domain has a reference back to the original defined business problem, question, or objective, thereby helping both new and experienced professionals. There are 3 key sectors which IAF was designed to support, assist, and enhance: academia, private sector, and public sector. Each sector has unique aspects where IAF is being used and applied. In some cases, IAF became the operative standard for any analytics effort at a company or an agency. In academia, as you can see, it applies to a variety of aspects from curricula to operations research and the world of data science. In the private sector, it is being used in everything from production and supply chain, hiring and recruiting, and competitive forecasting. The public sector benefits from IAF as it is used in fraud prevention, maximizing responsible funds management and appropriation, effective policy development and management, and aligning citizen demand signals with practical government-provided access.
Now we will outline the 7 domains. Collectively, the domains are the IAF. They are the workflow that guides you through any analytics endeavor. And in an ideal world, you would engage with them in order, as in the graphic you see on screen. The 7 domains are business problem or question framing, analytics problem framing, data, methodology or approach selection, analytics or model development, deployment, and lifecycle management. To better contextualize where they fit into the analytics process, you can liken doing analytics to building a house. The IAF is your frame, floor plan, or simply principles of best practice in construction. What you need to include, the domains, are the rooms that a house should have: a kitchen, a bathroom, a bedroom, all put together to make a complete house, or in other words, your analytics solution. Before we get into the domains, if you would indulge further analogy, the IAF is not about telling you how to go about the specifics of the construction of your house, what materials you should use, or what tools, or how each room should be furnished. Rather, as in its name, the IAF is a framework. Here are the rooms that any good, sturdy, livable, and lasting house needs to have, and the principles that go into building each one. It is up to the practitioner's skilled hand to see each put together to their own specifications.
Domain 1, define the business problem or question. This is the most critical and most overlooked area in the majority of analytics efforts. Analytics methodologies are applied to problems, which are sometimes stated as questions, and must have a clear, concise statement describing the business problem or question, not a technical or mathematical one. Any effort must ensure that the analytics is applied to solving the right challenge for the organization. Defining the business problem, question, or opportunity aligns stakeholders with the agreed upon business objective and the intended analytics outcome. On the left side column, you will see activities that are absolutely essential in defining the problem: answering the right question, determining who has a vested interest, who needs to align with the objective and planned outcome, and ensure that this problem or question is amenable to applying analytics. It may not be. On the right side, you see very clearly the risks to any analytics effort if you fail to address this domain. While analytics efforts often start in another area, or to our terminology, domain, like software or data, it is important to rapidly redirect efforts to domain 1. If you do not frame your objective, how do you know you are solving a problem or answering a relevant question? Without domain 1, you're running at high risk and probable failure, or at least you will have an unused product wasting time, resources, and funds. If you're trying to build confidence in analytics, not doing this activity dramatically erodes trust and reliability. For each domain, remember that documentation is essential and should be a required part of your solution in order to document what you've done and make it usable beyond the original developers.
Following business problem framing is domain 2, analytics problem framing. With your business problem or question clarified, the goal of domain 2 is to translate the agreed upon business problem into an actionable analytical structure. Not only is this based on the business problem you identified in domain 1, but you're also looking ahead here and setting the stage for the development of your methodological approach. So, as you're thinking about what the business problem is, you're discussing it with stakeholders, and you're getting a sense of whether analytics can be used to provide a structure for informing and taking action. If the business problem can be reframed as an analytics problem, your next question is, what kind of analytics problem is it? Is it descriptive, predictive, or prescriptive? Is it optimization or classification? These questions will help you navigate the domains ahead. This is a good time to consider whether AI may have a role to play in the analytical structure you're envisioning. Through this domain, you will start to identify a methodological approach suited to the business problem or question. However, you're not pulling out formulas right now. You're just assessing how analytics applies. You may decide the business problem is not an analytics problem and stop here. In domain 2, activities include taking the business problem you've described and, based on that, identifying what the target is for your analytics effort. You want to ask yourself what you hope will be different as a result of your effort and how you will measure this change. For example, if your goal is to improve efficiency of the loading dock at a vinyl window factory, you will likely target windows loaded per hour. Then, you'll identify the baseline or current performance, whatever it is you're trying to change, so that you can take the same measure later and assess whether your analytics effort achieved what you expected it to. Namely, in this example, increase windows loaded per hour. A key activity of this stage is determining the amenability of the business problem to an analytics solution. You will identify the drivers and inputs, the independent and dependent variables of the business process, and clarify the assumptions you would make in your analytics effort. Again, in doing so, you might find that the business problem isn't amenable to an analytics solution. As another example, if you're working for a hospital and leadership wants to, quote, use analytics to fix a chronically understaffed emergency department, you might find this isn't really an analytics problem. Rather, it might be a scheduling or HR issue. Staffing depends on hiring, training, and shift management, which, if framed differently, analytics might be able to address. But analytics cannot fix a shortage of available people, nor can it predict certain emergencies, which are by nature unpredictable. People may ask for, and even champion, an analytics solution when all it would do is give them another reason to make the same decisions they're already making in other ways, perhaps more efficiently and appropriately. So part of your work here is to understand the current decision-making process and to determine whether the analytics solution you are developing would result in an improvement commensurate to the effort. If you decide that analytics is an appropriate approach to take, you're setting the stage for the development of the methodology, identifying what team members you want to include in the effort, and keeping the stakeholders identified from Domain 1 involved so that you don't lose sight of the business problem.
Domain 3, data. Like Domain 1, Domain 3 is critical to the success, reliability, and positive outcome of your analytics effort. This is the most time-consuming domain and frequently takes the majority of effort. Understanding your data, its uses, context, constraints, reliability, and applicability to the business objective is the difference between success and failure. Since analytics efforts often start in Domain 3 without a clear business objective, attention must be paid to ensuring the data you use will support the business problem or question you're trying to solve. A strong, defined data approach is essential, as data quality, usability, ownership, privacy, or security issues can invalidate even the best models and waste time and uncertainty in rework. It is imperative that you understand your data landscape. Make certain you know what you own, what you use, and what you will create as you build and deploy your analytics solution. Too often, analytics efforts are derailed by data use restrictions, privacy controls, access limitations, and risk classifications. Other considerations including publication limitations, stewardship responsibilities, and constraints on merging data sets. Understanding your data sources, data you may need to acquire, and how data you produce will be secured, hosted, transported, and used is a responsibility not to be overlooked or taken lightly. It is time-consuming and involves what I call navigation and negotiation. Shortcuts always come back to influence, trust, quality recommendations, and outcomes. Sometimes something unknown, like terms and conditions for acquired data or a data use agreement, can evolve into significant problems which will compromise your best efforts. Take the time in this domain and do it right. The data domain covers a lot of activities, assessments, and validations to make your data trustworthy and usable. Common activities are data cleansing, harmonization, transformation, validation, and risk, bias, and quality assessment. Your data may need to undergo impact assessments for privacy, security, and compliance to maintain trust and ethical standards. The data alone is not the only source of activity evaluations and decisions needing to be made regarding retention, portability, secure computing, and policy impacts. These involve other expertise and will benefit from using the IAF to keep all experts and practitioners aligned on common objectives. Don't forget that data you create from your solution, which may be an output, which may also serve as an input, must follow a structured approach as well. Too often, the outcome data is not usable due to steps in this domain being skipped. Comprehensive data documentation, inventory practices, and effective data management enable repeatable processes and ensure reliability and support of the solution.
You've got your business problem. You've framed it as an analytics problem, and you've started to set the stage for solving it. You have identified the data that you can use to solve the problem. That brings us to Domain 4, methodology or approach framing. You might be asking yourself, what is the difference between a framework, which we've already been discussing, and a methodology, the subject of this domain? If you recall the house analogy at the beginning of this presentation, the framework is itself a broad description or set of requirements for a house. The domains are the rooms that you have in a successful house or analytics project. A methodology is more specific. In the case of the house, it would include the type of materials or tools. In this domain, you're deciding whether your house will have a shingled roof or aluminum siding. Will you build it with power tools? Which ones? Will the floors all be hardwood or carpeted? By the analogy, then, in domain 4, you're asking what specific technologies, models, software programs, and so on you will use for your analytics implementation. And you're ensuring that the specifics you select make sense given your organization's technology, analytical maturity, and business processes. Activities to anticipate in domain 4 include identifying suitable analytical techniques based on the nature of the problem, the available data, the time frame, and organizational resources to support the analytics or data product in deployment. It's one thing to come up with a solution, but if your IT department, your computing environment, or the restrictions on the use of your data cannot support its implementation, then your effort will not have the intended impact. So here, you're selecting the compatible technology stack. What's compatible with your organization, your skills, staff skills, users, the people on your team, and what can be effectively implemented. Choosing the right methodology is critical to delivering valid, scalable, and actionable insights. If you want the solution to be adopted in the business, if you want others to be able to repeat the process you're developing, then you want to plan for that here. You begin conceiving the type of problem you are working on in domain 2, and now, in domain 4, you're determining that specific model you may actually start building and considering appropriate analytical techniques. For example, linear regression, logistic regression, or a certain machine learning model. You're also thinking about how the data your model uses will be stored. What technology will be used to process it? How will a user interface with the data product? Do you need a histogram? Or are people expecting you to use ANOVA or linear programming to solve the problem? You're weighing the pros and cons of methodologies you know will work with methodologies you know your audience will be able to understand. You may be considering the user interface. Will users be entering data into a form they submit and giving them back a score that they then take action on? When considering technologies, for example, a key distinction to consider may be whether to use open source or not. You may be used to working with open source technologies. However, if your organization only allows proprietary technologies for security or other concerns, then you will want to take that into consideration before developing your model. In this step, you're determining the environment in which you'll be developing, testing, and deploying your model, and asking questions like, how will the model be backed up in case of disaster?
With the methodology selected, you actually now get into the meat of the endeavor, or in other words, creating the actual solution. Whether it be you are creating something descriptive, prescriptive, or predictive, this is where you build your solution, and additionally rigorously test it for performance reliability, ensuring it is ready for deployment. As the broad title to this domain implies, your solution could be anything you've decided on in domain 4, a machine learning model, an optimization, root cause analysis, A/B testing to name a few. Now, as an experienced practitioner knows, what one might traditionally think the analyst's job is, doing the actual problem solving, is just one of 7 domains that each occupy a substantial amount of time. The experienced analytics professional knows that everything surrounding a solution is just as important in the process as creating it, and makes the actual work on a solution clear and well-defined. By doing all the work from the previous domains, understanding what you are solving, the data you will be using, the method by which you create your solution, and having an understanding of the operating requirements your model will need to satisfy, positions you for deployment readiness. All these other domains pave the way to make the actual solution-making portion of an analytics effort smooth sailing. Domain 5 encompasses the building of models, plural that is, comparing them to find what works best, combining them as needed, evaluating them, revising based on client feedback and concerns, and documenting the whole process. In whatever solution you decide to develop and implement, you should be cognizant of a number of activities pertinent to this domain. If you were, say, building a machine learning model, for example, in addition to training, validating, and testing your models, you should be looking to identify biases that emerge from the data, identify key relationships between your inputs and outputs, verify if your outputs are what you actually intended to produce, and create visualizations that represent how your model works and its performance on its task. A key here to reiterate, as is a running theme of the IAF, is document everything. Anyone not working on your solution who reads your process should be able to replicate what you created and get the exact same results. You should have some form of version control and be able to revert back to a previous model at any given point. You should have a running tally of the biases, assumptions, and limitations that played into the creation of your solution. Furthermore, be prepared to do such documentation to communicate with both technical and non-technical audiences. Many more are involved in any analytics project than just analytics people. Your solution should be understandable to its actual end users, for one, and justifiable to often non-technical management teams that would be the source of your project in the first place. Why is this domain important? You are not just creating the solution to your problem. You are ensuring that your solution is justified, trustworthy, and reliable by merit of your process, documentation, and alignment to the work you did in the other domains.
Domain 6 is deployment. In this domain, but prior to actual deployment, a key step is securing sponsor agreement and stakeholder alignment to proceed with deployment of the solution as you've developed it. It is absolutely critical to understand the parts of the business or organization you're working in and how they will be affected by the deployment. This is the domain of risk. You want to be working with a multidisciplinary team here, including IT, business process owners, and others on business validation, testing, and on planning an initial rollout and change management process. You should know the roles played by the other people on your team. You don't need to know all the ins and outs of their specialties, but you should know how the pieces work together to support the solution and how the implementation or the new model will affect their work. It is important as an analytics professional to be involved in the deployment process rather than simply turning it over to others, for example, an IT department. You, as the person or team responsible for the model or product, will be invaluable to have on hand to troubleshoot if, for example, your model is behaving differently in production than it did in testing. For example, your IT department might run into trouble thinking something is a patch problem rather than a model performance problem. In deployment, you will test to verify that the deployed solution is working correctly and that the data is flowing reliably once it enters live production. The documentation you developed will be useful here, as you also want to communicate and over-communicate throughout this process, both to answer any questions about adoption and to learn about the user experience of your analytics solution in production. Your objective is to integrate the analytics into the business environment. With your new decision-making process available, if that's how your analytics solution functions, people may need training on using it, and careful attention to this change management aspect of deployment will build trust and institutional knowledge. Once deployed, you will want to follow up with the users to obtain a business validation report and stakeholder agreement that the solution is meeting the needs of the business. While you should be involved in deployment, the analytics team may move to a support role rather than a lead role depending on your organization structure, who the business process owner is, and other factors. However, as mentioned, if the analytics team has moved into a support role rather than a lead role, it is still imperative to be involved and follow up. Activities in this domain include testing, not testing the model for accuracy as you did in Domain 5, but testing deployment, including stress testing the systems that the model will run on. How does your new model fit into the software or user interface requirements if that applies to your solution? How will existing technologies work with what you have developed? Even with rigorous testing, you might find that the data used in driving the analytics model, once deployed, has errors or other issues that are shutting down or crashing the system. So it is important to be on hand to help troubleshoot these. Other scenarios include the model taking too long to run or in some other way impeding the operation of the system environment in which it is located. The solution might encounter issues when interacting with larger parts of the IT architecture that the IT team cannot diagnose. The useful phrase here is operational readiness. It is important at this stage to confirm that the process can work in the business or production environment. So deployment includes confirming operational readiness, obtaining sponsor agreement and stakeholder alignment, obtaining authorization to operate, and following up to make sure that it is working as intended and being adopted as intended. Finally, it is important to note that through this process, you're documenting on two distinct levels. You're creating a technical document describing what was deployed, the decisions made, and the rationale for its development. And you're also documenting what occurred during the deployment, how it was used, and the results of, for example, a 60-day follow-up.
Managing the life cycle of your analytics solution is all about ensuring that your solution continues to provide value over the time frame of its life cycle, that is, the period from its initial design and deployment to the much greater period of time beyond that, where a solution is actively being used in production or an operating environment until the day it is decommissioned. Once a model is out in production, you need to ensure it continues to do what it's supposed to do and adapt to changes in what it is expected to do, as your solution may take on new responsibilities or have to evolve to meet a changing environment. The word sustainability comes to mind here. Lifecycle management is all about making your solution able to stand and operate on its own and live beyond your own personal oversight. This is often the most overlooked of the domains, as it involves the most collaboration with those not in the analytics profession, managers, users, and technicians, all involved with the ongoing success and use of your product. This domain encompasses things to adapt to and things to monitor. For example, the initial notion of value might change. A boss who wanted to focus on profits might now instead base success on revenue. If your model predicts prices, it will need adjustment if something shakes up the market. And of course, in a world of data, your model training will need to be regularly updated to prevent it from becoming stale and suffering from performance drift. This domain is about keeping track of everything that surrounds a model in an operating environment. The type of activities you will encounter in this domain will include questions such as, what side effects is this model causing in user behavior, for example? What new security vulnerabilities have been discovered? What is the ongoing cost-benefit trade-off with the resources the model expends? What specific factors are most affecting the performance of the model? What are new trends in the input data the model receives? Who are the new people using the model, and how can they get up to speed with it? You might be tasked with a new project, and the maintenance of your solution is handed over to another team. How do you ensure that transition is seamless? How will the solution be transitioned out when a new one is developed? And how will it be archived so there is no loss of information in the operating environment? And of course, documentation. Document the changes and circumstances that occur, the updates you've made to the model, and the impact the model has in its environment. Why is Domain 7 important? A solution is meaningless if it does not live beyond the moment. Your original objective does not go away once you've implemented your model. It and everything around it evolve and change over time, and as such, needs to be met with a continuously adapting solution. Those are the domains, each of which cannot be overlooked in their importance. The absence of one room could lead to the collapse of the house, after all. Now, before we went into the domains, we showed you this graphic. This is the optimistic ideal, a traditional workflow. You start nicely at domain 1 and work your way through to 7. This, however, is not the reality of the vast majority of analytics work. As it was developed by real-world experts who are well familiar with the messy reality of analytics, the IAF is intended to be viewed more pragmatically. The IAF can be thought of accordingly. It's nonlinear. Each domain is flexible and adaptable to the needs of the others. It looks something more like this, circular and iterative. In the real world, you might have circumstances that require you to start at domain 3, then go to domain 1, then skip to 5. When you think about how you actually go about using the framework and navigating these domains as you do your work, you can visually think of it as such. You can imagine you start with a cogwheel and end with a circle, each wedge on the cog representing a domain that needs to be addressed over the course of the project. Shown here is how you can imagine an ideal world progression through the domains. You start by completing domain 1, then completing domain 2, and continuing around the cog until you resolve each wedge into a nice completed circle of domains. The real world is rarely like this. As mentioned, your starting point might be different. Some domains may already be done when you start. Other domains you've completed might need to be revisited as you work through others and discover new things. Let's take an example and represent it with this graphic. Imagine you've just been hired on a team that already has a model they've made that's been deployed for years and operates on an existing dataset. In the years since it has been deployed, business objectives have changed, and you're tasked with revamping the model for new needs. As the graphic depicts, Domain 3, Data, Domain 5, Model, and Domain 7, Lifecycle, are already in place, with the rest needing to be addressed to complete your project. Let's imagine how you might go about doing so. Now, it is best practice when navigating the domains to get back to Domain 1 as quickly as possible, as it really is the centering point for the others. So you do just that and formulate a concrete business question the model needs to answer. You have then completed Domain 1, and in doing so, found out that the existing model doesn't address the new business concerns Domain 1 has clarified. You uncheck Domain 5, leaving what exists in production with the existing dataset for the time being, and so keeping Domains 3 and 7 resolved with our newly resolved Domain 1. Next, you convert the business question into an analytically structured question, completing Domain 2. You find the data is satisfactory to answer the new question, so keep Domain 3 completed. You then determine and create your model that answers the questions, completing Domains 4 and 5. Then you take the old one out of production in anticipation to launch the one you made, unchecking Domain 7. But as you get to work on Domain 6, getting your new model ready for deployment, out of the blue, your boss tells you he actually wants the model to answer something else, which will require a whole new set of data. You uncheck Domains 1 and 3 and backtrack. Circling back to Domain 1, you determine the business question again, check off Domain 1, and actually find out it has much in common with the prior question, and lends itself to a similar analytics endeavor. So you make some small tweaks to the existing analytics question, keeping Domain 2 completed, acquire and clean a new set of data that has the capacity to answer the question, and check off Domain 3. Given the question is mostly the same, you tweak the model you made accordingly and train it on the new data, keeping Domains 4 and 5 resolved. Finally, we can finish with the nice clean progression of deploying and maintaining the new model, moving cleanly through Domains 6 and 7 and checking them off. Just like that, we've satisfied all the domains of the framework and thus have a completed project. Now we've described the domains and given you a sense about how they can be practically navigated. We'll conclude with a couple of brief use case examples that walk you through the substance of tackling theoretical, real-world analytics endeavors using the IAF, and demonstrate how the IAF lends itself to adaptability in your approach. Use case 1. Imagine, for example, you do analytics work for a hospital. One day, the CEO comes back from an AI conference and says, "Hi there, I just bought a license for ChatGPT. Let's use it for something." In other words, without any context or guidance, your boss has told you to start doing analytics things with a shiny new tool. Your boss says, "Give me something that makes this thing pay for itself within a month." And then he leaves you alone to ponder at your desk. Let's navigate this situation with the IAF. You know you need to get back to Domain 1 as quickly as possible to establish some direction of what to tackle. First, however, where do we sit in regards to the other domains? What we do know, Domain 3, you already know what kind of data the hospital has available as you've worked with it before: patient data, appointment schedules, cost and budgeting reports, supply inventories, for example. You document an outline of each of these data sources, their metadata, what privacy policy or ethical restrictions are associated with each. Then, Domain 6. You know what kind of IT infrastructure is in place, and you take a moment to document what limitations and constraints this operating environment has, in consideration for what is possible for you to deploy. In Domain 4, we are tasked with using a specific tool, so let's understand what it is capable of. You go about creating a list of methodologies and tasks that you identify it can accomplish. Now, Domain 1. Your boss has given you free rein to identify any analytics problem or opportunity you see fit. Maybe you conduct interviews with management to find what problems they deal with on a regular basis. Maybe you host focus groups with doctors to find opportunities. In the end, your investigation yields several opportunities that analytics can address. For one, you find that doctors collectively say they waste a lot of time on manually charting and performing data entry. You recognize data entry as a capability of your tool when you did your overview of Domain 4, so you choose this problem to tackle. Moving into Domain 2, you operationalize this problem by making it clear you would like to develop a system of AI charting and data entry that measurably performs faster and with less error than with traditional hand entry. Going back to Domain 3, from your previous assessment, you know you have an existing repository of hand-charted data to compare against your solution, And having consulted with the privacy officer and cybersecurity, you have confirmed that using the data will not violate any patient confidentiality once records are anonymized. Going back to your notes on Domain 6, your contact in the IT department has server space that can be made available to run your solution. So, you move to Domain 5 and develop your AI-assisted data entry tool that fills charts based on clinical notes and rigorously test it and develop fail-safe conditions for mistakes, and you find it performs faster and more accurately than the hand-entered data you identified in Domain 3. You conduct a cost analysis on the results to find it could save, say, 200 work hours of doctors' time annually, allowing them to take on, say, 10 more patients each on average. And so you propose the solution to your boss and doctors, the future users of your solution, who are all very impressed. Domain 6. You deploy it with the help of IT to integrate it into existing hospital systems, develop a training manual, and host workshops to help doctors use the solution. Then, your boss wants you to tackle one of the other opportunities that you found in the discovery phase of the project. Domain 7. You transition the maintenance of your solution over to the product management team and ensure they have all the documentation they need to sustain the solution and respond to doctors' continued feedback. To summarize, with the IAF, we took a completely open-ended situation and worked our way through the domains from identifying capabilities, to determining an opportunity for analytics, to developing an AI tool, to passing it off to management. Some ideas of how this situation could go if you didn't have the IAF to help you navigate it. Without a clear business question, you could waste a week developing some stereotypical smart features for hospital systems, only to realize that they have nothing to do with analytics and you just created a headache for IT. You could then waste another week developing a fantastic model for predicting patient care follow-ups, only to go to IT and find it is beyond their capability to run. So maybe you take another week to go back and scale down your model and pass it off to IT then. They don't know how to maintain it because you haven't documented how it works, and doctors ignore it because they don't trust it, because you haven't involved them in the process of its creation. Then the hospital gets sued because you violated patient privacy with the data you used for the model, creating not only legal trouble, but a hospital reputation issue. Risks, failures, and simply put, avoidable headaches when you follow the Informs Analytics framework.
That brings us to use case 2. In this case, and you may have had this experience before, you're starting with a bunch of data, and you're tasked to do something with it. There's tons of it. It's got to be valuable, right? This is the question and scenario. Consider the experience of a municipal court, for example. Courts are required to keep records, and since many have become digitized in recent years, this opens up the opportunity for analytics. However, there's rules governing how the data is kept and what it can be used for. Yet it will be invaluable for informing policy decisions if understood. Now, in this case, we're starting in Domain 3, and there's lots of exploration. Discovery is the legal term. Lots of discovery or exploration you could do here. You want to understand where the data comes from, how it was generated, and what constraints or limitations to its use exist. Then, as you begin working with the data, you will start asking questions with it, leading the process back to Domain 1. In this example, if we're a court, question might be, how do we know we're doing a good job as a court? Can the data tell us that? A big challenge might be the intent of data collection, which often must be addressed when starting with a bunch of data in Domain 3. The purpose for which the data was collected may limit what can be done with it. A lot of times, the data that is used in a court system might be collected simply for the purposes of identifying someone and contain salient features of their case for court resolution. It might not be structured or maintained or contain information useful for analytics. You can begin to navigate this data, these concerns, and your questions for it using the IAF. As you're starting in Domain 3, getting an understanding of the data, in this case court records, one question might be whether expungement or sealing records affects the completeness of your data. And does this change the questions you can answer with it? How are expungements removed from the database? Does any information remain? Or is all information removed and the record deleted entirely? Or can you see that there was a case, but just not any of the specific information pertaining to it? Can you answer historical questions about the numbers of dispositions? Or can you only reliably go back so far? With these questions of the data in mind, You want to address domain 1 and ask how an analysis could be useful for the business. In this case, the administration of a court, with all its constituents, knowing taxpayers want justice to be upheld as leanly and as efficiently as possible. In domain 1, then, you may frame business problems as, for example, improving court efficiency, reducing case backlog and failures to appear, and identifying zip code specific disparities. In this domain, you're engaging stakeholders. You're meeting with court administrators, judges, the finance team, and community members or representatives, such as city councilors, to align on priorities. Then in domain 2, you're translating the business problem into an analytics problem. For example, if the business problem is to identify zip code specific disparities, framing this as an analytics problem might be to report which zip codes have the highest fines imposed. If it is about failure to appears, you might ask, can we predict which cases will require additional follow-up? You're also defining success metrics such as reduced case backlog, increased fine collection rates, and proportional outcomes across neighborhoods. It's important to clarify assumptions in domain 2. Are you assuming that the payment data is reflective of the actions of the payer? That citation zip codes reflect residents correctly? Or that historical patterns are indicative of future behavior based on your research and what you know is happening in law enforcement and policy changes? A lot of patterns that appear in the data around a court may be indicative of individual behavior, or they may be indicative of systemic law enforcement or policy changes, or they could indicate biases. Then you would continue, revisiting domain 3 after reframing the problem with an analytical structure, and continue so on through the other domains. By applying the IAF to this use case, you will find that you ensured your effort includes a reflection on its connection to the business problem at every stage. In domain 1 and 2, you formulated clear objectives and sought stakeholder alignment around well-defined analytics problems applicable to the court system. In domain 3, you considered the type of data you're working with, how and why it was collected, and any restrictions on its use. You considered how to leverage the data effectively and ethically, and assessed whether the use suited the collection methods. Moving forward, in domain 4, you devise a methodology to meet the needs of the analytics problem, and one that works in the given data infrastructure. In domain 5, you develop models to provide actionable insights. And in domain 6, you deploy, along with a multidisciplinary team, the analytics solution, promoting adoption into business practice and verifying responsible use of sensitive data. Finally, in domain 7, you establish protocols within the court to continuously monitor, improve, and maintain this analytic capability. Alternatively, without IAF, you might have, right from the start, overlooked questions about how you are working with personally identifiable information, also known as PII, and what privacy and use issues there might be. For example, cases related to divorce, custody, and juvenile records may have specific disclosure requirements. There may be reasons why the historic record of cases will have restrictions and limitations, such as record sealing and expungement. You might start building models without context for how data is generated. This would lead to data that is misunderstood and used inappropriately for modeling. Such models might generate insight, but not address any real business need. It may be that there could also be missed ethical considerations if these models reproduce or reinforce biases. It is important that an analyst become multidisciplinary. While you're an analytics professional, you're working with a team in a specific industry and developing your knowledge base.
We've now explained the IAF, the domains, and demonstrated how you can use the framework to navigate your analytics endeavors. To conclude, and if we'd have you take away anything from this presentation, it would be a few final big picture points we want to emphasize about why the IAF matters and why at the end of the day you should use it. The IAF has an immense range of use. Any work you do that involves analytics or simply involves data benefits from this proven structured approach. As a structured approach, the IAF can center and coordinate the efforts of a team and ensure effective communication across different areas of expertise. The IAF provides an understanding of the fundamentals of analytics work as a whole to those who are not necessarily analytics practitioners, but needs some level of understanding with the field. The IAF was built for the real world. This is not a theoretical framework, but a proven approach distilling decades of experience into one product that understands what does and doesn't work. The IAF was designed with the intent and ability to integrate other industry methodologies. Say, for example, if you already use an industry method for model development, you may feel free to replace the A in IAF with AI. The IAF has a wide range of applicability, and particularly in AI, a proven structured approach can lend reliability to this often uncertain area. Following the framework helps avoid costly mistakes or wasted time by making you aware of the risks and pitfalls of analytics. The IAF is unique in the workplace today as the only framework of its kind to ensure an entire analytics lifecycle is focused on answering the business problem or question. And a major benefit is the full published framework is available at no charge.
If you need anything graphic to remind you why you should use the IF, this contrasting pair of outcomes provides a visual representation of which team you would rather be part of. Having personally seen too many efforts end up on the right-hand side in chaos, I strongly encourage you to use the IF and be on the left side with valuable, reliable, efficient outcomes. Thank you for viewing this Informs Analytics Framework presentation. We hope you found it beneficial and informative. At the end of this presentation are links that connect you to additional information and materials. Please return to the video often and put IF to work for you.